What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? How you guys doing, gang? You couple of weirdos here hanging out during the afternoon playing a 2-game championship series slate. Love you guys. By special request on Twitter. Wasn't going to do a show for baseball today. We got to have a football show later on for the showdown slate, of course. Bills-Jets Monday Night Football game. That'll be around 6 o'clock probably. Wasn't thinking about doing a baseball slate. Honestly, when I woke up this morning, I was thinking it was just the Yankees game. I'm pleasantly surprised to realize that the Mets and Dodgers were coming right back, playing this game today. Obviously, the projections have been up since early this morning, so obviously we've been on top of it for a while. And I was sitting here just kind of staring at things. I've got an NHL lineup in. The NHL projections are done. All the lineups, all the projected lineups and projected lines were out pretty early. Got to keep an eye on the goaltenders and everything, but got the lines in early. It's only a 3-game NHL slate, just the 1-game football slate. Built an NHL lineup. Did I put a baseball placeholder in? I got to get a quick baseball lineup in. I'll do that while we talk. If there's even a FanDuel tournament still open. I'm not even going to play this slate. How about that? There's not even a good tournament open on FanDuel. But we'll talk it through. And like I said, I was just kind of sitting here and somebody asked on Twitter, so what the hell? Why not? Might as well. So we got a 2-gamer, NLCS, Game 2. Wipeout in Game 1. Hopefully a little bit better. Dodgers going with a bullpen game in this one. Got Ryan Brazier opening and Landon Knack as the bulk reliever. I've got Knack in there as well. I'll swap over to him as we talk about that game. But should be a little bit of an opportunity here, one would think, for the Mets. And then the Guardians here in New York at the Yankees. I will say, if you look at some of the RG weather page I was just looking at where Roth puts his stuff, and the Labs, just their quirky little weather thing, they've got significant wind blowing out to right field in Yankee Stadium, which is already that short porch frequent home run opportunity. And I just walked down the street to get this coffee. Shout out Choco Pan, Jersey City. And the wind is blowing directly up the street and into my eyes. Had to actually go and put saline in my eyes and wash my eyes out because I was sitting here with like grit in my eyes when I sat back down. But point being, there is a pretty significant wind in the New York City area today, so do with that information what you will. I do think that people can overreact to the wind at times, but the fact that it's blowing out to right field is, kind of noteworthy. Let me mute the phone here. So that Mets-Dodgers game, first one up. That one starts in about an hour. 8-run total there. Dodgers favored in a home game, 3.78 total going toward the Mets. They've got Sean Manaea, pretty capable pitcher on the mound on their side. And then again, going up against Ryan Brazier and Landon Knack in a bullpen game. And then presumably, whatever arms after we get to 4 innings of the bulk reliever opener combo. It's anybody's guess. But I've got some of the bullpen information there. And then the second game, the Guardians, pretty big underdogs, 3.37 implied total going up against Carlos Rodon. Probably the top overall pitcher on the board. You could argue, I guess, between him and Manaea a little bit if you wanted to. And then for the Guardians, we've got Alex Cobb. He just went 3 innings. We talked about him last week. I feel like he was on the last slate that we had a show for. Went 3 innings in that game, threw 41 pitches. That was his 4th outing of the entire season. Had only made a few sim starts before that one. I'm not expecting anything more than 3. Maybe I gave him 3.5 to split the difference. So 3, maybe 4. I'm not expecting much more. What Cobb does do, though, in the model is cut into the Yankees' home run upside. He is a ground ball oriented pitcher last few years of data, sub 5%, 5-degree average launch angle, and significantly sub. It's more like sub 2, but I didn't want to say that exactly. But we'll take a look at it. So suppressing the Yankees' power is realistic for a couple of innings. That said, he's not exactly an ace, and you can get away with some runs against him, and it is the Yankees. They're pulling a 4.22 implied total against, and they'll get into the Guardians' bullpen. And that's it. It's a pretty short slate. If you're just joining us, check out rotoscouts.com. Subscriptions only $1 a day, under $1 a day, I should say. Every single plan. It's basically just a decision of how much you want to pay and how frequently you want to pay. Weekly, monthly, quarterly subscriptions available. Weeklies are easy. Under $7 to get you from here through next week. So it includes football next weekend. It'll include every single baseball slate, every NHL slate between now and then, main slate, main slate, I should say. If there's a random ass 2-game like 10 a.m. slate for NHL, probably going to miss it. Let's be honest with each other. But it includes every single sport that we cover, access to every tool, piece of content, every single data point, all for under $1 a day. And we are coming up very quickly on the NBA season, and that's going to be lumped in there as well. And yes, going to be handling it all. Haven't quite figured out how. But like, just, I honestly, I was thinking about it today. I would love to actually start doing NHL shows, but there's no way in hell. But like, look how pretty the NHL board is. It's so nice and clean. There's no stats up here because I'm just using this right now for myself to just, you know, pull the projections and stuff. But it's like, it's the exact same setup as the MLB board. It's just nice and clean. Like, got all the power play lines set up so you can see kind of graphically who's playing together on power plays. I just don't have the NHL at my fingertips right now. You know? Like the Rangers, sure. I'm a big Ranger fan. Easy. And I know a lot of the players, but there's depth that I don't know. There's new players that I don't know. There's guys like Soplakov here who I don't exactly know how to say his name. If you're playing that slate tonight, I love the way that on FanDuel anyway, Penguins power play 2, Rangers power play 1 fits together really nicely. But anyway, that's just one of the things going on here at rotoscouts that you'll have access to. I mean, you won't have access to the spreadsheet, but you'll have access to the projections. So I encourage you to check it out. You should also check out our guys over at acemine.io. And yes, Jim Money, the wind is blowing out, apparently, to right field. If it's, let me think it through. If it's blowing in my eyes as I'm walking south-ish, I feel like that should be... Is that out to right field? No, now I'm curious. Now you got me curious. Make sure these guys are right. That's a... Let's see. That's 161st. And River... Yeah. That should be out right center-ish, I think. I feel like the Fantasy Labs one has it a little bit more extreme right. The RG one has it more correct. It's more right center-ish. But 15, 16 mile an hour wind, and I'm telling you, it was gusting pretty significantly. It literally blew dirt into my eyes. It was one of the situations where somebody was walking the other way, and I was like going like that and making a face, and I was like, oh, I hope that person didn't think I was making a face at them. But I think they realized that it was pretty fucking windy. So anyway, Carlos Rodon, top of the board. Obviously, problematic matchup against the Guardians. I mean, they're a very good, very low strikeout team. There's some home run hitters in that lineup. I actually have Joneski Noel as the home run pick of the day. We've also got Jose Ramirez as one of the only players on the slate above the magic number. So definitely pulling some power against on the Guardian side. And you can see Rodon not even over 30 points on FanDuel, not over 15 on the DraftKings slate, but easily the top-end pitcher on this slate. The only guy who, at least at points in his career, has really been regarded as a true ace. I'd say Sean Manaea, at his best, has been maybe like a 2.5, 3 kind of a guy. Never really the top of the board pitcher that Rodon's been. Rodon now number 2 for the Yankees, but highest price pitcher for a reason on this slate. Highest projected by a little bit over Manaea. Manaea, similarly tough matchup against the Dodgers. They're very low strikeout as well. They're just as threatening, if not more threatening. Actually, they're definitely more threatening than the Guardians lineup. But Manaea's been pitching well overall. He's found some strikeouts along the way. I figure we're getting 5 innings, maybe 5 and change out of him, and then you can argue for the quality start, the 6th inning, depending on how things are going. Landon Knack's just in there for 3 innings. Alex Cobb's in there for 3.5. Ryan Brazier's just in there for an inning. Do with that what you will. I feel like Landon Knack, 84 on FanDuel. Alex Cobb, 84 on FanDuel. They feel a little bit pricey for what you're going to get out of them. But if both of the top end guys fail, then the quality start maybe doesn't matter. Landon Knack probably most likely to be able to align for a win bonus out of all those guys. Brazier won't be able to get it. Cobb's going to start the game, but probably be out after 3, so he won't be able to get it. Knack will slide into the game, so depending on when, obviously, the Dodgers score, if they score and win, you're playing a kind of a dance there. Brazier for 4,000, you can see what the projection looks like. There's really no meat on the bone there at all, and I don't think we're getting much more than an inning. Maybe an inning and a batter. But it's not going to be much. So it's a really, really thin, kind of straightforward pitching slate. Mets and the Dodgers lineups are both confirmed. If you're playing and building lineups right now and you're looking at the Yankees, we haven't seen the confirmed lineup, but I did change it from the original one that went in the very early morning projection. Oh, it actually just dropped. Let me get it in here. The point was going to be that in the mid-morning, I went back in and added Anthony Rizzo to it after the Yanks confirmed that he was going to be on the ALCS roster, and he is starting and hitting 8th tonight. I went back and forth on that spot, whether it was going to be 7th or 8th, because of the lefty. It was basically a matter of whether Boone wanted the lefty-lefty pairing in 6-7 or in 8-9. And he opted for 8-9. I would have gone 6-7 and stacked Jazz Chisholm and Anthony Rizzo together and skipped Volpe and left the Volpe in 8. But what do I know? Everything else about the Yankees lineup is consistent. Every time I type Rizzo and Verdugo next to each other, I just think of the Naruto scene from Billy Madison. All right, so we'll get to that game in a minute, but the point was that Anthony Rizzo is back for the New York Yankees, and that's a plus at first base. No more John Berti, Oswaldo Cabrera rotation at first base. We've got an actually competent first baseman. Not that those guys were bad, but they're not professional first basemen. They're not professional hitters, really. Top of the Mets looks like normal. Frankie Lindor, pretty fantastic off the top. A 30-29 season at 223 ISO. Created runs 36% better than average. For 55-43, Mookie shortstop eligible on the FanDuel slate. You've also got Tommy Edman. You've also got Enrique Hernandez downboard. You've also in the Mets lineup got Jose Iglesias. So you've got a lot of options at the position in this game. In the next game, it's a lot more thin. Right, I'm not really a big fan of Brian Rocchio. You can, on a short slate, you can get him in just on the off chance that a base hit in a 2-game slate with a maybe base hit run scoring kind of thing can definitely be enough to be a contributor at shortstop and win you a slate or be in a winning lineup. So Rocchio, perfectly fine to mix and match your way through, but probably the lowest end shortstop on this slate. Anthony Volpe behind him. So it's only 2 guys from this game, and they're probably on the lower end as compared to everybody from this game. So I think it makes a lot of sense to look into that. And clearly, Frankie Lindor and, to a degree on FanDuel, Mookie Betts, the highest-end shortstops available. On DraftKings, you don't have Enrique Hernandez at shortstop. You do have Tommy Edman. You don't have Mookie Betts. Obviously, you have Frankie Lindor. And then on the other side, it's the same setup with Rocchio and Anthony Volpe. So a little bit more thin at the shortstop position. I think that pushes the ownership up on Lindor pretty significantly on DraftKings. He's just going to kind of be the obvious guy. So as a just straightforward pivot, if you're going Tommy Edman, if you're going to any one of the other shortstops as a ownership pivot, I do think you're gaining ground on just, the general construction of the slate, but you're making a big, big sacrifice in terms of the upside of the ceiling score at that position. Out of the other guys there, Tommy Edman probably for 3,600 would be my favorite guy. Just thinking about across the site, and that's just taking into account how much Volpe kind of just struggled and was mediocre through the season and is really, really hit and miss, where Edman, not the model of consistency by any means, but gives you a lot of the same things that Volpe does, has done it for a lot longer, is more professional about going about it, does it at a lower strikeout rate. There's a lot more to like about Tommy Edman in that situation. So I kind of like that. I like the spot hitting ahead of Max Muncy. It's probably better than hitting ahead of Anthony Rizzo at the bottom of the Yankees lineup. So there's a lot of reasons to think Tommy Edman makes sense there if you're going away from Lindor. But if you're just thinking about the shortstop position in a vacuum, absent everything else, stacking and everything, then Lindor is obvious. Mark Vientos for just 4,100 continues to be hilarious. 27 home runs on the season, a 251 ISO, 135 WRC plus. Just a third baseman on DraftKings. Give you first base eligibility as well on FanDuel. I would say third base wise, probably. The second best third baseman on the slate. It's Jose Ramirez, kind of with a bullet. And he's similar to Francisco Lindor in that he's the clear-cut guy at that position on DK. But this is a probably better next option. And then Max Muncy is the same thing. So third base, you do have three pretty significant options on DraftKings, and then you've got a little bit more depth on FanDuel. Enrique Hernandez plays all five positions on the FanDuel slate, and then you get, what do you got from the Guardians? You get David Fry, Jose Ramirez, you get Jazz Chisholm. So a lot more depth, a lot more pieces to move around. But third base overall, all of those names, all of those options outside of Enrique Hernandez, who was at both positions, are better than the alternative shortstop options. So just more to work with at third base, a lot deeper of an overall position. Brendan Nimmo for $39.33, very cheap for his upside. Going up against a right-handed opener, Ryan Brazier comes in with 28 innings pitched over 4 starts, which were all opener appearances. The deepest he pitched into a game was 1 inning. He hasn't gone more than an inning all season. He went, did I not grab his, grabbed everybody's playoff log but him. He's made 3 appearances in the playoffs so far in the Padres series, and he did pitch more than an inning in 2 of those games. Inning and 2/3 on the 5th on Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago. On the 6th, he went 2/3 of an inning. Then he came back on Wednesday, went an inning and a third through 19 pitches. So, like I was saying before, maybe we get him to face a full inning and then another batter, depending on what they're looking to do. If you're thinking about Jesse Winker being the target, you bring in. Oh, that wouldn't make sense. You think about him. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't matter. Because they're not going to bring in a lefty unless they're thinking of like a wedge lefty with a Banda. Let's see. VS is not in the bullpen. Kopech, but he'd be higher end. Probably, yeah, it would probably be Banda, but they'd probably want to save him for the back end of that with more pitches. So I think we go straight to Landon Knack. So it probably doesn't matter as far as the lefty-righty. I was just thinking of Winker in here as the target he got through those 3. So maybe he goes through 3 and then comes back, and depends what happens here. So maybe at the outside, you get that second inning if all goes perfectly for Ryan Brazier. At 4,000 with a between 1 and 5, 1 and 4 strikeout rate, not a big walk rate on the small sample on the season. It's okay, I guess, as a dart. Again, you'd basically need everybody who's a real pitcher to fail. But it is very, very cheap to help build lineups. So it's not completely impossible. Just know that you're not getting your win bonus and you're looking at a sub 10-point ceiling. There's not much there. So continuing on with the Mets, Nimmo as a lefty bat going up against Brazier. Brazier allowed a fair amount of contact, nearly 91 miles an hour of exit velo, nearly 44% hard hits is very significant. He probably got a little bit lucky or small sampled his way to a 2.73% home run rate. More opportunities against, there are more home runs hit because this is a fly ball trajectory and a lot of significant contact for Brazier. So picking off Brandon Nimmo, who has a 47.1% hard hit, 9% barrels on the season. Not a bad option from the left side for as cheap as he is. It's a very, very cheap player. Pete Alonso for just 46. Double-digit barrels, 45.9% hard hits, another 34 home runs on his resume. Pete Alonso is one of the most significant home run hitters of the last 5 years. Definitely a major option at first base. If you're thinking about first base, there's him. There's Shohei Ohtani, obviously, on DraftKings. That's a major, major asset, having him have first base eligibility. You also get Enrique Hernandez and Freddie Freeman, so you've got multiple options at the position over there. You've got Rizzo on the Yankees side. And you've got Josh Naylor, who's a significant bat, as well as David Fry, who's a not insignificant bat on the Guardians lineup. So, again, similar to third base, a lot to work with and a lot of high upside guys at the first base position today. But Alonso's among them. 6.71 in the home run model is one of the most significant marks at the position on the slate. Starling Marte, better than just another outfielder, contributes multiple categories, 7 home runs, 16 steals on the season, a 102 WRC+. He's just 2,700. He's better as a correlated scorer. Average strikeout, average walk, basically everything about him is a little sliver above average. He's a good, not great player in basically everything. He's definitely playable in the heart of the Mets lineup. He could be the first guy to face Landon Knack out of the bullpen hitting 5th, so he'll probably be the linchpin as to whether or not Ryan Brazier is able to get through a second inning. Depends on what Starling Marte, Jesse Winker do. Winker had a decent year in his 508 plate appearances. For one thing, he got on base at a 360 clip. That makes you good regardless of basically anything else that happens. 118 WRC+, creator runs 18% better than average. Hit the ball fairly well, 7.6%, barrels 36.8% hard hits, walked 12.4% of the time to support that on base, hit 14 home runs, stole 14 bases. That's a good season. It's an effective player for 32-26. A little bit more than just another outfielder. That's why this is a playoff team. If you got multiple guys that are a little bit more than the average and then a few stars, you've got yourself a playoff team. Jose Iglesias, probably not better than average overall, but not a terrible hitter. He's always hit for an okay batting average. He's been a mediocre run creator. He's never really hit for power. He's been a utility man replacement level player wherever he's been. But he did hold down 341, 387, 456, and created runs 40% better than average for this Mets team, and is just kind of like the joy buzzer for this team. So you can continue going there. He's a low strikeout, low walk guy who puts the ball in play. He's not unreasonable. He plays 3 positions on FanDuel. He's a second baseman on the DraftKings slate. As far as second base goes, Dodgers don't give you one on DraftKings. Mets only give you Iglesias. Yankees are going to give you Gleyber Torres and nobody else. And Andres Jimenez from the Dodgers. So you've basically got 3 options at second base unless you're looking to put in a bench player and hope for a pinch hit situation. And really, among the second base eligible guys, I don't know that there was really an appealing person for that. Nobody leaps to mind. I guess maybe like a Chris Taylor from the Dodgers side probably has second base. Who's even on the roster? And again, that's getting really thin if you're starting to do that. Come on. So yeah, Chris Taylor's on the roster. And it would really only be him. They're fairly pitching heavy. He's the utility guy. They have Kevin Kiermaier on the roster. Kiermaier doesn't play any infield. Andy Pajas doesn't play infield. And then it's Freeman, Lux, who's a lefty. So Lux would be interesting. So those would be your 2 guys, is Gavin Lux and Chris Taylor. Lefty, righty. In the outfield, you could add Kevin Kiermaier to that list, but Kiermaier's really here for defense. And maybe Pajas gets pinch hit for. They're not pinch hitting for Mookie. They're not pinch hitting for Teoscar. So, and we're just looking, kind of at we were looking kind of at second base. It's not a deep position today. So it makes Iglesias at worst playable, and he's definitely affordable at the position. I like Gleyber Torres better, and I probably like Andres Jimenez better. I think the skill set is higher, but there's no denying that out of the three, Jose Iglesias has had by far the better 280 and change plate appearances and is in the best matchup facing the bullpen. Tyrone Taylor, a frisky player with a lot of skills to fill multiple categories. He's just okay. Average or maybe even below, but he makes things happen at times when he gets into the lineup for DFS purposes. He's perfectly fine as long as he's cheap. 3,000, 2,400. He won't be popular. Probably one of the lower owned outfield options on the slate. You can definitely get there. 7.2% barrels, 35% hard hits, puts him around the average. Last year, a little bit better for hard hits, a little bit worse for barrels. Came away with 7 home runs and 10 steals in 338 chances, 98 WRC plus. Again, we're just talking about a player who's okay, but we're just looking for that big RBI double. We're just looking for that weird, random ass home run. Get on base a couple times, steal a bag, and score some runs. Any kind of output on a 2-game slate in a championship series format. Couple of runs here, a couple of points there is definitely worthwhile. Francisco Alvarez is capable of giving you that. 6.8% barrels, 42.3% hard hits on the season. 2,800 and 2,500, especially where you have to play catchers. Not insignificant at all. 11 home runs and 338 chances. Double the chances. You put him into the 20s probably for home runs. Probably comes away with a higher ISO. A little bit of bad luck involved in that ISO, I would think, given how hard he hits the ball. 102 WRC plus for the season. He finished above average as a run creator. Still a lot of strikeouts in his game, but again, facing a moderate strikeout pitcher like Ryan Brazier. I combined them into Randon Nakajer. And then Knack. He's got a 24.1% strikeout rate. Decent rating by Stuff Plus, but look at all the power, look at all the home runs that he gave up. So these are two relatively significant home run targets for the Mets hitters for you to throw at. So I have no issues using the bottom of the lineup with guys like Tyrone Taylor and Francisco Alvarez from the bottom of the Mets. 2.88 in the home run model is not overly significant, but you can see there's a lot of power given up there from a significant fly ball pitcher once Knack gets into the game. And Brazier was a moderate fly ball pitcher giving up a lot of premium contact who got lucky not to give up home runs. So definitely targetable. Knack, as far as he goes, 84 on FanDuel, I feel like is a little bit heavy. But again, he is one guy that would maybe angle for a win bonus depending on how your chips fall. At 66 on DraftKings, I think he's playable for the same reason. Manaea on the Mets side, 24.9% strikeout rate on the season. He walked 8.5%, threw 181 and 2/3 in 32 starts. Solid depth down the stretch. Was giving you 6-7 innings when he used to be a guy who would check out after 5 or in the 5th. Used to be a guy who worked out of the bullpen for a significant chunk in there. He's really come back and been a very good left-handed starter this year. 3.47 ERA, a 4.04 xFIP. The xFIP's the real number, but still, that's an effective enough back-end starter. Had just a 108 whip, an 11.7% strikeout rate. Limited home runs pretty effectively despite a fly ball trajectory. And it's fairly real. There's weak and medium contact in here. So not bad. It's not totally elite. He's not invulnerable to power. You can see one guy half again on top of the magic number because he's difficult to suppress. Not that I tried. And then everybody else below the magic number, but pulling some appreciable power upside there. Shohei Ohtani for 65-47, first base and outfield eligible. What can you say? 134 runs, 130 ribbies, a 390 on base. Talk about some of the things I don't usually bring up. I usually talk about all this stuff. He costs, he's projected for 14.5 DK points. 17.5 FanDuel points. It's absolutely ridiculous. Monster numbers across the board for Ohtani. A double-digit 11.1% walk rate. 4 guys in the Dodgers lineup have double-digit walk rates. Could definitely be a problem for Manaea. They've also got 9.4% on Will Smith, 8.1 on Teoscar, who strikes out a lot but can definitely draw a walk. So that could get away from Sean Manaea if he's not at absolute peak form. If he loses a couple guys early, it could lead to some runs and some damage early. And that's the way that Manaea owners lose the slate awfully quick, and guys who roster, Liland and Knacks of the world come into play a lot quicker. But overall, Manaea, easily playable, 82, 9,000. One of the real starters and the guys who's going to give you, if things go well, 5+. I think he's got upside into the 6. I do think he's got upside for the quality start. He got to that level a number of times during the season. In the postseason so far, he went 7 against Philly on the 8th. 3 hits, 1 earned run, struck out 6 through 91 pitches. Absolutely in line for that kind of a day again if necessary. Against the Brewers in the start before that on the 2nd, 5 innings, 2 earned runs. Give up a homer, struck out 4 through 86 pitches in that one. A little bit more conservative in that one in the shorter series. But I definitely think, split the difference and call it 6 innings. He booked for 5 and change from the model. I didn't change anything in there, but you could get upside to 6. So one of the more believable darts at a quality start at worst. Ohtani's absolutely a priority on this slate if you're stacking Dodgers or looking at Dodgers at all. He's obviously an easy to go to one-off despite the price. As far as the upside, it's almost unrivaled on this slate. It probably is unrivaled on this slate, considering what the Alex Cobb downs. What happened here? What the hell just happened? That's weird. Oh, that's why. I forgot I typed Landon Knack in there. I was searching for another lineup. Oh, come on now. What's going on? Why is that? Why did that? Oh. I pasted his value, not as the formula. There we go. As I was saying, given Landon Knack's ability to cut into launch angle, this sample doesn't matter, but 1.3 degrees over 151 innings last year, 1.8 degrees over 150 innings the year before. Very limited home run upside over the last couple of seasons of sample. Did not pitch much, probably only going 4 innings at most. So we'll worry about Alex Cobb in a minute. But I do think that makes Shohei Ohtani a little bit unrivaled at the top, given you're cutting into Aaron Judge a little there. Given that Jose Ramirez is facing Carlos Rodon, I think he'd be the third guy in that mix anyway. So Shohei, believably up at the top of that board. Then you get into Mookie Betts for a significant discount from his teammate, 53.42, still very expensive. 19 home runs, 16 steals on the season, a 202 ISO, 141 WRC plus, and 516 chances. You give him another 200 plate appearances, he's around 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases. Absolutely fantastic superstar caliber player. Honestly, a little bit cheap on DraftKings at 53. 51 for Teoscar, 3,500 on FanDuel. He hit 33 home runs this year, 229 ISO. Fantastic player, earned himself a monster deal playing on a 1 year. Freddie Freeman, 4,800, 3,400, 22 home runs from Freddie, a 194 ISO. Dipped a little bit as far as the average, the on base goes, but still a fantastic season. If you just put that with no name next to it, people would be climbing over one another to sign that player. It looks like a little bit of a dip because it's from Freddie Freeman, but those are still terrific numbers. He's easy to reach at 48.34 is the least expensive of the Dodgers' top 4. Will Smith for just 4,033, 20 home runs from him, a 185 ISO, 111 WRC plus. Terrific catcher, especially where you have to play the position. Halfway to the magic number, a little bit more than halfway for everybody in the heart of the Dodgers lineup. Again, significant power upside for sure for some of these right-handed bats. Tommy Edmonds, a switch hitter with a little bit of pop. 3,600 shortstop and outfield. We talked about him already when we were talking about the shortstop spot. On FanDuel, you get him at second base. You get him in outfield as well. You can mix and match your way to that. Like his depth. I like the upside that he gives you for home runs, for steals. Needs to get on base to provide correlated scoring. That's always going to be the flaw in his game, is his inconsistent ability to get on base. But for a one-game shot, he's definitely worthwhile. Max Muncy at 5,000, 3,500, I think is the forgotten man still at the bottom of this lineup. Max Muncy's a tremendous 3 true outcomes hitter. 15 home runs in 293 plate appearances, a 262 ISO, a 358 on base with a 15.4% walk rate. He's fantastic. He's a superstar caliber player. Slots right into third base. Enrique Hernandez is a mix and match quality guy. He's been hot in the postseason. If you believe in hot, it's not a real thing, but had a couple of good games in there after one of the worst seasons of his career, if not the worst season of his career. But did hit 12 home runs, 17% worse than average for run creation, but he comes cheap. Did have a 41.2% hard hit rate, is low strikeout. So if you're just looking for well-struck balls in play, he's definitely on that list. I prefer Andy Pages if you're looking for an outfielder, and you can get him a little bit cheaper at $29.25 across sites. 13 home runs for Pages on the season, a solid 10.7% barrels, 40% hard hits. It's definitely interesting. I would say Mets, Dodgers, Manaea, and then just the bullpen, bleh. And from the bullpen, it's Landon Knack over Ryan Brazier, despite Brazier being the nominal starter. Embiid does not plan on playing back-to-backs ever again. So they're going to just cut like 30% off his, it's not 30%, but they're going to cut like 15% off of his salary. Anthony Taylor's jumping into the 15K NHL tonight. Love it. I'll be all over making sure those are updated for you, buddy. Power saying, be aware Nimmo's running in pain due to plantar fasciitis for Brandon Nimmo. Good note there. Appreciate that, bud. Anthony Taylor's looking at Mookie, Judge, and Stanton, not Ohtani, on FanDuel only. Wow, that's a way to go. Hey, if you can get those three guys in your lineup, hell, why not? Hit the like button if you're here. We're diving into game number 2. Check out rotoscouts.com. Under $1 a day for access to every single sport. 3 of them going on right now. We'll have number 4 going on in another week. There's about a week of crossover there, but it's just going to be the World Series, so I don't know if there will be baseball projections at that point. But you get access for under $1 a day to every single sport, every piece of data, every piece of content. Got a great Discord going on. Jump into the Discord. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter if you're not on there already. Like and retweet things when they pop up. Helps out a great deal. Check out our guys over at acemind.io. We'll be looking at some of their sims on the football show later on. Somewhere 6:30 as usual for Monday Night Football for the Showdown slate. We'll be back to talk Bills-Jets a little bit later. We'll look at Ace Mind Sims. We'll build some lineups by hand as usual. And we'll talk about that slate. But right now, about 20 and change minutes to lock, about half hour. Mom is saying Gleyber or Iglesias on DK. I was just going through that before. In a total vacuum, it's probably Gleyber. Just because he is the better hitter. He's the bigger event hitter. More power, more believable upside. Better lineup spot as well. Hitting leadoff, more plate appearance opportunities. Hitting ahead of Soto and Judge. Good as the Mets lineup has been, hitting in the back end of the Mets lineup is not nearly as good as hitting in front of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. Really, all Gleyber Torres needs to do to get on base, and he was decent at that this year, .330 on base percentage. So I would lean that way, but as short as that position is, there's nothing wrong with going the other direction. So again, I do think you can go in any direction at that position, given how short your options are, because on a 2-game slate, a base hit at a 3-man position, a base hit and a run scored could win you the position and be slate, contribute to a slate winning lineup. So I think there are more important inflection points on the slate than that. But between those two, I would lean Gleyber. He will also probably be the more popular of the two. So Alex Cobb, again, almost certainly just going 3 innings, maybe 4, maybe into the 4th, depending on how things are going for him. In his appearance against Detroit on the 9th, he went 3 innings. He gave up 3 hits. He gave up 2 earned runs. Struck out 2, walked 1, 41 pitches thrown. Faced 13 hitters. He had only gone 3 starts prior to that. 2 in August, then took a couple weeks off, made a start on September 1st, and then didn't pitch the rest of the way through September. Did go 5 2/3 on August 14th, did go 6 innings on September 1st, but then if memory serves, it was a blister that he was dealing with. So it's not like he's incapable of giving us more, but I really don't think that's what they're looking for in this spot here. I don't think he's fully stretched out. I don't think they consider him fully stretched out. But like I was highlighting, what he will do is, for while he's in the game, he'll have an impact on that Yankees power. Guardians did use a significant amount of their bullpen. They put a lot of tax on it on Saturday just to get here. Didn't have a game on Sunday. So I think, I don't think they're going to be shy about handing it off to the bullpen. So we're probably looking at 3 or 4. Maybe that does lock in the 4th, or not lock it in, but lock in the opportunity for 4. The fact that the bullpen was pretty taxed in that series. They did have Friday off. They had Sunday off. And it's not like it was crazy work on Saturday. It's just everybody pitched. Everybody threw 10-plus pitches. We did get that Sabrowski guy in the game the other day when we were talking about it. Didn't end up winning the lineup, but he threw 28 pitches that day. It was pretty good. Struck out 3, I think. They do have a very high-end bullpen in Cleveland, too, so I do think that pushes the issue for just wanting to get 3-4 clean innings and then get to the bullpen and just start chopping away innings from this and outs from this Yankees lineup. Outs are the most precious thing, so they're going to want to take them where they can get them, and I don't think Alex Cobb is the guy they want to go chasing them for too long. But while he's in there, again, significant impact on the home run numbers because he is a very much a ground ball pitcher and a guy who has cut very significantly into home run upside. But like a lot of those guys, he does allow a significant hard hit rate. He does allow a lot of exit velocity. Same thing's been true this year in the small sample. So the Yankees being the Yankees are still going to hit the ball extremely hard. That still bodes just fine for guys like Juan Soto. Aaron Judge still over the home run number. If you put a lot of other pitchers in there, he would be in the 15 range. He hit 58 home runs. He stole 10 bases. Had a 379 ISO. Pretty fantastic up there. So there's plenty of threat to Alex Cobb, and the Yankees good enough at sequencing. You've got Soto at a 419 on base and Judge at a 458 hitting behind Gleyber Torres, who had a 330. Austin Wells at 322 is a very effective catcher. Stanton's not good at getting on base, but he could wipe the bases clean of all those other guys. Bottom of the lineup, not quite as good. Jazz is not bad at getting on base with his 324. He's also got a lot of lefty power, the ability to steal bases and contribute in multiple categories. So it's a threatening lineup. In no way is Alex Cobb safe. 7,500, I don't think you're getting your win bonus there, but what you could potentially get is an SP2, 4 innings, a little bit of quality, 3-4 strikeouts along the way, and on the good day, he doesn't give up runs to the Yankees, induces some big ground balls, gets a couple double plays out of guys like Stanton, and gets out of some innings. 8,400 on FanDuel is a little bit more of a stretch. You're not getting a shot at your bonus, your quality start, your win. So a little bit more difficult, but he is in play because, again, if Carlos Rodon fails, if Sean Manaea fails, then the quality start's probably out the window and not going to matter regardless. The win bonus is going to be hard to come by. So I don't think that guys like Cobb are unplayable on these 2-game slates. Carlos Rodon, on his side, the most likely pitcher to have a successful day, the most likely pitcher to give you 6 good innings, find a bunch of strikeouts, etc., etc. But he is facing a very good threatening Guardians lineup with a 20.8% strikeout rate. Let me see if we got the confirmed from them. It's the only one we don't have yet. Rodon on the season, good, not great. He had a really rough stretch in there over 6-8 games in the middle of the season that really had a big impact on the surface numbers. 3.96 ERA and had an impact in the under the cover numbers too. A 4.09 xFIP, but a 14% strikeout rate, a 26.5%. 14% swinging strike rate, 26.5% strikeout rate. Walked just 7.7%, but had a 1.22 WHIP. Gave up a little bit of BABIP in there. 28.5% CSW, should be in the 30s against a 14% swinging strike rate. So there's room to get back to the pitcher he once was, and he showed it in a number of different starts this year. Remember, when this goes across the whole sample, that means there were significant upside games mixed in, given these rates. He ended up just being okay, again, good, not great, and he gave up a ton of power through the entire season. 90-plus miles an hour of exit velo is over the mark. 11% barrels is over the mark by a lot. 40.7% hard hits, again, over the mark by a significant amount. 4.21% home runs. Totally believable. Honestly, could have been higher given all this contact, especially pitching half your games in Yankee Stadium. So definitely believable power upside for these guys. It's just with the Guardians, you've got Jose Ramirez, who is a massive home run hitter. You've got Josh Naylor, who's a big-time home run hitter, but is a left-handed bat. You've got Joneski Noel, who's been a very, very good power bat in his very, very small sample in the majors, and again, is the home run pick today. But outside of those guys, there's not a ton of super threatening home run bats. You could throw David Fry maybe into that mix a little bit, but it's not the biggest home run team. They can absolutely, any one of these guys, take advantage of the contact available here and drive the ball and hit a home run against Carlos Rodon. But as far as like predictive analysis and upside, it's a little bit more limited than a lot of other teams might show against this kind of contact that Rodon's allowed. You also, in that mix somewhere in there, do have a little bit of better numbers from Rodon. 2 years ago, was significantly good at limiting power in a fantastic season where he did have a 30+% CSW, had a 33.4% strikeout rate. Last year was really bad with power, though, and that continued this year, although he wrangled it to look a little bit better. So there's a lot of bad in with the good with Carlos Rodon, but again, easily the top-end pitcher of the day at 85.92, worth paying for and easy enough to get to on slates as you build lineups. On the Guardian side, Stephen Kwan off the top, 4,500, 3,200. The cat's here. I don't know if you can see him. I forgot to put him away. Hi, Oz. What's going on? Say hi to the people. Yeah, the people. Yeah, they're up there. They're all in that. Yeah, they're inside that little camera. Isn't that weird? They can hear you. You want to say anything to them? Ozzy? Do you want to say anything to the people? Well, you can say hi. No? Hi, buddy. We're almost done, dude. All right, come on. 1, 2, 3. That was Ozzy. If you're a Batman fan, you can put it together. Especially if you know the dog's name. So, Stephen Kwan off the top, 45.32. A great table setter. Honestly, pretty cheap at those prices. For a guy hit 292, 368, created runs 31% better than average, came away with an odd number of home runs, had 14 homers, stole 12 bases on the season. Definitely showed some power, a lefty bat that you could throw against the lefty here in Yankee Stadium with a little bit of upside with the wind blowing out toward right, toward that short porch. Definitely not a bad idea. Take a quick peek at some of the splits here. Kwan picked up 5 of those home runs against lefties. That was the number I was curious about. He's a great hitter against either hand as far as a hitter, but a little bit of the power upside did come against same-handed pitching this year. Just a 128 ISO versus a 136 against righties. Had a 319, 392, 447 slash line with a 145 WRC plus against same-handed pitching versus a 280, 358, 416 with a 125 against righties, though. Pretty significant upside for Stephen Kwan. So again, picking him off cheap, lefty, where people probably would not necessarily consider him as like your top end guy, one of your most desirable outfielders on a slate where outfield is the deepest position by a pretty wide stretch. Stephen Kwan, definitely playable. David Fry, if he's hitting second, 35-27, 4 positions on FanDuel, 2 on DraftKings. Catcher eligible on DK makes him valuable, 3,500 over there, 14 home runs on the season, a solid 185 ISO, a 129 WRC plus. If you watched, most of those home runs came in one big clump, and then he was just kind of okay. But there is reasonable right-handed power there. 37.4% hard hits and 7.4% barrels are just average, but had a better barrel rate in a small sample last year. Draws his walks, 10.7% walks. He's a reasonable enough player. He had a 356 on base to go with over the 392 plate appearances to support the 129 WRC plus. So again, another guy who is, maybe a little bit less than in people's perceptions, but there's a lot to like about David Fry in addition to just the raw right-handed power. Jose Ramirez is a super-duper star, 39 home runs, 41 steals. I like to think that if they played that last game, he would have gotten his 40-40 season, but was obviously fantastic either way. 58, 30, 41, easy to reach as compared to some of the other stars on the slate, kind of a little bit cheaper than the 2 Yankees stars. Just as good, if not just as good as those guys, maybe a little bit less. Lane Thomas, 42, 36, 15 homers, 32 steals, had a big knock the other day. A lot of power, 40% hard hit rate, 7.4% barrels is pretty good. Tends to be more line drive oriented, but did have a very good season last year and rounded into form after arriving in Cleveland this year, hitting cleanup or thereabouts today in the heart of the lineup at a cheap price from the right side against a fairly gettable lefty. Like the upside for Lane Thomas and some power to come through. 5.15 in the home run model. Naylor at 38-31. I know he didn't clean up the season as strongly. And let's see, against lefties, only 6 of his 31 homers came lefty-lefty. That's why he's down lineup a little bit. Slash 224, 305, 410, 186 ISO. The ISO's not nothing. Did create runs 4% better than average against lefties. Only struck out 19.5% of the time. That's more than he struck out against righties, but still not even 20% of the time. Still drew his walks. So he's not inept against lefties. He just has a little bit less pop, a little bit less quality. But I think, again, if it pushes people away from Josh Naylor, with the idea that Carlos Rodon is gettable for power and just a well-struck fly ball to right field in Yankee Stadium from Josh Naylor could easily get into the seats, I have no issues playing him, and honestly, he gets more appealing if people aren't necessarily going to him. Overall, just 16.6% strikeouts from the season, so you're getting a lot of high-quality bat on ball. Josh Naylor's very good, so happy to pick up the pieces if people leave him on the table. Noel came away with 14.5% barrels in his 198 plate appearances. It amounted to 13 home runs, a monster 268 ISO. Kid is a very real power hitter. He's a problematic 31.8% strikeouts against just 6.6% walks. Right now, he's just a free swinger, but he does have a ton of power upside. Outfield for 32 on DraftKings is playable. First base and outfield for 25 on FanDuel is appealing. Andres Jimenez for 33-27. A mediocre season, but did steal 30 bases despite the sub 300 on base. Low strikeout, low walk, so balls in play, but not particularly well struck. Not a great option as a left-handed second baseman, but playable. Again, the position is very, very short. Austin Hedges, if he's in the lineup at the dead mint price, you can definitely work with that. Super high strikeouts and low walks at 34.2 and 4.1% over his 146 plate appearances. Only hit 2 home runs this season. Hasn't really been good in quite a while. 1 home run last year in 212. Hit 7, but was sub Mendoza, sub 250 on base over 338 plate appearances 2 years ago. So it's just a dart throw, but he is the dead mint price. So if you're looking to pay up, even if you're doing it as like a dart throw dead mint price against Carlos Rodon on a 2-game slate, I don't think that's completely bananas if it helps pay for like these two going back the other way, and then like a Mookie Betts, Max Muncy kind of a combo with whatever else falls around the cracks. I think that's worth doing from time to time if you're building a lot of DraftKings lineups. 2100 is kind of the same concept on FanDuel. Brian Rocchio for 26-25. I talked about him already. Probably the lowest end shortstop on the slate. But on a 2-gamer where anything can happen and 6 to 10 points could be position winning, there's nothing wrong with mixing some in for a cheap price. And honestly, getting a little bit ahead of the field is perfectly fine if you're inclined to do that. On the Yankees side, outside of just taking away some of the home run upside, there's nothing wrong with attacking Alex Cobb. He had just a 16.1% strikeout rate in the small sample this year. Last year, just 20.3. Didn't really walk anybody, so that is an attribute for him as well. 2 years ago, just 6.8%. Last year, 5.7%. But the strikeouts have been in decline. The strike throwing overall has been in decline over a couple of years now. So I'm really not thinking that it's a threatening hitter, and there is base hit sequencing kind of upside again for a Yankees team that at least at the top end is capable of doing that, and the big knock is always lurking with this team. Glaber for 43-29 had a, again, deceptively okay season. I won't say it's good because we were expecting a hell of a lot more, but did come away as a positive run creator, 104 WRC plus for the regular season. Did hit 15 home runs. Once upon a time, from a second baseman, that was pretty significant. Struck out 20.5% of the time. That was way up from the 14.6 last year, but it's not bad. That's a better than average strikeout rate. 9.8% walks is better than average, down just 0.2 from last year. So he pulled his walk rate together by the end of the season. He got on base at a very good clip at 330. That's a good on base percentage. I'd prefer 350, 360 or better, but 330, there's nothing wrong with that from an okay second baseman. The ISO is what disappeared. You can see he lost 5 points a hard hit. He lost, point and change of barrel. That had a pretty dramatic impact on the ISO, as did the strikeouts. If you lose 6% of strikeout rate, those are additional outs where you're not having the opportunity to drive the ball for base hits. And if you're thinking about a strikeout, what was the nature of that swing? That a lot of those were probably balls that, had he made contact, would have been an extra base hit, if you follow me. So while these are not the best numbers, again, it's not a good season, but he did pull together a lot of positive indicators that he's not completely, broken. So for our purposes, of 43-29, hitting ahead of Jojo and Sudge. Well said. Soto and Judge, definitely worth playing. Definitely a great 3-man stack there. He helps lower the average cost for those two guys down to 55 apiece. On FanDuel as a 4-man, if you go down to Austin Wells there, it's 36 apiece. It's expensive if you use Stanton because Stanton's 37. That puts you up at 3,900 apiece. FanDuel made it difficult to stack Yankees as a full 4-man with the guys that you would truly want. On DraftKings, you can have that full 5-man for $49.40 apiece. So DraftKings, easy to play, basically whatever you want. If you use guys further down the lineup, it just gets cheaper. Wellesley, solid contact in his plate appearances. 21% strikeouts is very good from a very young catcher. 11.4% walks is excellent. Just under 10% barrels, just under 40% hard hits. I'm stretching by saying just under, but I like this player. He's hitting cleanup basically every day. 414 plate appearances. He had 13 home runs out of 167 ISO, was a positive run creator. Kid's very good, especially where you need to play catchers. Worthwhile. Definitely going to be some up and down performances in there, especially as we get on the big stage here. But he's in the heart of the Yankees lineup for a reason. And there's a lot of quality going in both directions as a guy who can knock the guys ahead of him in, and those guys, again, get on at better than 400 clips, or as a guy who can get on base and set the table for the guys behind him. Giancarlo Stanton, again, nobody hits the ball harder. We've seen monster playoff performances from Stanton. He's the, home run to plate appearance ratio. It's only Babe Ruth and him at the top of the board in the postseason in Major League history. And it's not like Stanton's one of these guys who's got a just, ridiculous, by virtue of being on the Yankees and making the World Series every year, Bernie Williams style, playoff resume. He's just good at hitting for power. And has come through and has gotten some opportunities and has come through in them in October. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's nothing predictive about that. It's just happenstance of when in the calendar year that plate appearance fell. But the broader point is Giancarlo Stanton never stopped being a truly elite power hitter, one of the best of his generation. 27 homers and 459 chances this year, 242 ISO, 55.1% hard hits, 20.7% barrels. Truly an elite power bat. Jazz Chisholm, 9.7% barrels, 40.8% hard hits at third base, 4,700, 3,300 plays, 3 positions. This is fantastic on FanDuel. On the short slate, being able to move Jazzy around to third base, second base, or if you need him in the outfield, that's perfectly fine as well. But just having that positional flex on a player who was, 24 home runs, 40 stolen bases this season was tremendous. Had a 180 ISO, created runs 10% better than average. Strikes out a fair amount of the time, walks at just an okay clip, but a lefty bat, again, in Yankee Stadium with power upside and significant true power upside. After you get past Alex Cobb, that's going to come through in a big way. I like it a lot from Jazz Chisholm. Anthony Volpe's just okay. Mix and match caliber shortstop on a shortstop slate. You can definitely go there. Hit 12 home runs, stole 28 bases to, potentially help pad a little scoring. The most likely scenario, Volpe gets on base once and maybe steals a bag and scores a run. That could be enough. But again, shortstop, you do have a couple of quality superstars in the other game at that position. Anthony Rizzo at 3,000. I didn't notice this until just now. News alert. Anthony Rizzo's the dead min price on FanDuel at 2,000. You just play that. If you're stacking any Yankees at all, Anthony Rizzo should be in the lineup. I don't really care that he's hitting 8th. I would rather have him hitting 7th, but hitting 8th, he could wrap back around to the top. I know he's been mostly a waste of time over the last 2 years, especially since taking that concussion last year. That has been the major thing in my mind that has kept him down. I really don't think he's recovered fully from that. But there is good in his 375 plate appearances this year. It didn't really come in the power department. He had 8 home runs, had a 107 ISO, only got on at a 301 clip, but only struck out 17.3% of the time. Walked 7.2, that's just average, that's down for him, but the strikeout rate was totally manageable. Means he was able to put bat on ball. It just wasn't able to do that with a significant amount of premium contact or upside. But if you're talking about the quality of this player over time, the swing plane, the guy, the muscle memory even, if we want to go to that level, Anthony Rizzo's a significant left-handed home run bat at first base over the last 10 years. So that's not just gone. It's in there somewhere. For the dead min, one swing honestly, for the dead man, if he gives me one barrel, I don't even care if it goes foul. You've made the right play. It's just way too cheap, even for this version of Anthony Rizzo. And then Alex Verdugo just kind of sucks. He was one of the worst hitters in baseball this year. 233, 291, 356 with an 83 WRC plus. Has shown a little bit of life and friskiness down the stretch and into the playoffs here. He's the best defender they have in left field, so he's getting regular shots. 29, 26 across sites. Mix and match quality. He is left-handed. Could poke one into the short seats in right. Overall, Yankees bats, Carlos Rodon. Probably Carlos Rodon, Yankees bats, but either way. And then Guardians bats, and really nothing from the Guardians pitching staff, but Alex Cobb is going to be involved and playable on both sites, so you have to put him on that list as far as ranking goes. And then that's really it, because it's about to be lock. Mom is stacking up the Mets. Anthony Taylor's got a 4-man with Judge and Stanton, and Manaea is the pitcher on FanDuel with Mookie. That sounds pretty beautiful. Rodon 89.9%. Is that an ownership number? Holy Christ. I mean, that just directly says, like, just fade Carlos Rodon, right? Like, if you're building one lineup, if you're building a bunch, you have, plenty, but I would undercut that number pretty significantly. I wouldn't put Carlos Rodon in 9 of 10 lineups. I think it's easy enough to bypass that. And again, all you need at that number then is if he's going to be in 90% of lineups, a couple of runs against and him to fail to, book the win, which is perfectly viable here. And it's a low strikeout opponent. So that's bananas. I think you could definitely go Sean Manaea, Alex Cobb, for example. You could go Sean Manaea, Landon Knack, and just throw a blanket, hopefully, over the win bonus in that other game and take the good starter and the guy who's going to be the bulk reliever with a shot at the win. You could do Alex Cobb for the same reason. I don't think Cobb's necessarily got to win, but if you go like Cobb, Knack, you've saved a ton of money. You've got two guys who could, Cobb not necessarily out of the picture for 5 innings. Knack could, if the game times out correctly, qualify for the win, depending on when the run scores. So there are needles to be threaded around that 90% ownership. I think that's bananas. I think that's probably too high. Rodon deserves the most ownership by far, but that's dramatic. Where is Manaea on that list? So they've got Rodon at 90, and they don't have Manaea above 26? How's that possible? Am I missing him? Is that your exposure power? Or is that somebody's ownership projections? Maybe it's Power's exposure. Yeah, Josh, I mean, there's always that variable when you're talking about the bulk relievers, but we do have a quote saying that he was going to be the bulk reliever today. Let me double down on that. Yeah, so the quote from Dave Roberts is that Landon Knack is the way it's written on CBS's blurb here, with Knack in line to record, and then the quote is most of the outs per Roberts. Right, so that to me says he's coming in midway through the second, in the third, and going 3 innings. But yeah, you're always dealing with that variable of I don't know for sure if this guy's going to come into the game. That's why you got to consider it a dart throw, and you're just booking the loss. But you know that that's what you're doing. You know that probability exists when you make that play. Absolutely, Anthony. I totally agree. Rizzo's the cheat code. What's Rizzo's ownership? Let me see. I know the slate's like about to start, but man, now I wish I was playing. Now that I know Riz is dead min on FanDuel, I would have been all over that. Oh, come on. Oh, all right. They don't have him projected. I was like, wait, come on. That's dumb. That's going to be maybe more of a cheat code because it seems like other places didn't get to projecting him. So he might break some people's sims or not go through people's sims correctly. Depending on how people's sims work, if they put in a default number, then he might come up more frequently because he's super, super cheap. At 2,000, he'll have a projection and he'll go in with no ownership or whatever, however it works. But if a 0 ownership number, and this is one of the major sites, just breaks people's sims, then he won't come up for them, which is kind of interesting for a dead minimum price player. But yeah, I do think that Riz is the way to go. And I woulda, but I didn't. I put the NHL lineup in earlier, and I got distracted and didn't build an MLB lineup, so I just don't have a lineup in. I didn't have a placeholder, and when I looked at the start of the show, FanDuel just didn't have any good contests up, so I just missed it. That's all. But that's okay. I'll play my Rangers tonight. I absolutely love the hockey lineup that I have in, so means it won't work as usual. But we'll play that. We'll play the Monday Night Football slate as this is getting started here. Let's go Mets. Rooting for the Metsies. I'd love to see a Subway Series. But I'm a Yankees fan. I'm not a Mets-hating Yankees fan. Never have been. There have been times where I've always, rooted passionately for the Mets if they were in and the Yanks are out. Funny story that I'm sure I told on shows over the years. Me and my buddy Dan piled into the car back in '99 for Game 6 of the NLCS down in Atlanta. We left college in New Jersey the night before without tickets. And at the time, I had dyed red hair that had faded to more of like an orange look. And I wasn't wearing a hat. And I was going nuts in that. If you remember that game, it was a bananas game. Went back and forth. Was tied in at 6, I want to say, in the 9th inning. And then Kenny Rogers walked in the winning run and the Mets lost. But just a bonkers game, and we were going back and forth with a bunch of fans and everything. So these people in Atlanta thought I was the biggest Mets fan in the entire universe. This lunatic with orange hair from New York yelling in my face about the Mets. But it was funny because, different vibes. After the Mets lost, they were coming up and like giving me hugs. Like, hey, brother, you guys will be back next year. You got a great team there. Fun series. Fun time. But obviously, go Yanks. But go Mets too. I want to see the Subway Series. I think it'll be fun. Yanks primed to pick this one off. They know how to beat the Guardians in the postseason, but it won't be easy. So knock on wood. Don't want to jinx anything. But it should be a good series on both sides. Should be fun. Enjoy the games today, fellas. 2 hours or so, we'll be back. We'll talk a little bit on Monday Night Football. We'll look at some Ace Mind lineups. We'll build some by hand. We'll check out some ownership and some player info. And that'll be that for Monday. Check out rotoscouts.com. You guys absolutely rock, by the way. The guys that are out there who have signed up for memberships, and there have been a lot of you guys so far. So really, really appreciate it. Under $1 a day for access to every single sport, every tool, every piece of content. Never a hidden fee. Never going to be above $1 a day as long as I can control it. And you don't see any corporate takeovers in our future, so I think we'll be all right with that. Anyway, you guys rock. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll see you in just a little bit.